Welcome to the
We
show,
didn't
Mr.
even
Melvin Foot. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, doing well.
Okay, great. Fatima Dabari, how are you?
I'm good. I'm very well. How about you?
Good, good, good. Thank you for honoring our invitation and welcome to the show today. On the show today, we'll be talking about the U.S. Immigration laws and laws, policies, and the 2020 general election. Let me come to you first, Mr. Melvin Foot.
I'm doing well, doing well.
Yeah, let me come to you first. During your recent interview with Pan-African Visions, you said, and I quote, Africa has not been a priority region for the Trump administration. What would you expect a Biden-Harris ticket to do differently?
Well, the reality is that if Biden wins the presidency and becomes the president in November, his first priority for the next year or two is certainly going to be restoring the American economy, responding to COVID-19 and making sure a vaccine is available and distributed. That's no easy task. The American economy has also been devastated. It's similar to when Obama came to power. He had heard all the banks had crashed, the housing market had crashed, the U.S. economy was in turmoil. So Obama came to, then he followed George W. Bush, who gave $15 billion for PEPFAR, $5 billion for the Millennium Challenge account. So here comes Obama, and all the Africans expected him to do all kinds of things. He had to stop what he was doing and support, strengthen the American people. And that's where I came in. So I think that the reality is that if Biden does win the presidency, I don't see any dramatic, immediate response to Africa. I think they would be friendly. I think they would be meeting with the African ambassador. There'll be a lot of goodwill expressed. But when I think about tangible things that the Biden administration would take up with Africa, I don't see much changing, I'd say in the first year or two.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Melvin. And I'll come back to you because you have been working on Africa for close to 40 years. So that is tremendous, and that is very significant to me. Let me go quickly to Miss Attorney Fatima Dabari. I want her to give me a quick, brief insights to, on June 22nd this year, the Trump administration signed a new executive order titled Proclamation Suspending Entry of Aliens Who Present a Risk to the U.S. labor market following COVID outbreak. What's your take on this proclamation?
Well, the take on the proclamation to me was, or is, not very much beneficial to Americans as people may think it is, right? So the focus is that if we allow more people to come in, according to the administration, you're risking jobs that are already not available for US citizens.
Okay.
But the reality is that for people who are coming into the US and those who are allowed to come into the US right now, so a US citizen can bring their spouse and their children under the age of 21. They can come in. Right now, because of COVID, the consulates and all those places are not really functioning at the highest level, even here locally.
Okay.
For a very long time, we were not even able to go to court, okay, right? People were not having in-person interviews and things of that nature for a while. Okay. So the proclamation, in my estimation, was really just a way for the administration to send a message to their base to say, we are trying to save your jobs. But in reality, it doesn't really do that much per se, based on where we are. Okay. The issue will come in later, right? Because it's supposed to be in effect until December 2020. So if things get better now, then for these next few months, no one is really allowed to come into the country unless you already have a visa that's already been approved. And you fit into the exception categories like nurses and doctors, medical workers who can come in and help with the COVID pandemic in the United States. So that's what we have right now.
Okay, so yeah, okay, thank you so much for that insight. Mr. Melvin, I said you've been working around across Africa. You started with Africa. You work around. You are very much around during the Clinton administration. You work very closely with so many diplomatic communities, head of states on the continent. So I want you to give me, what do you think should Biden-Harris ticket win November 2020 election? What do you think? What do you think should be different, or their approach in U.S.-Africa relation?
I think there's a lot to build on, but invariably what happens with Africa, sure enough, we get beat up by the right-wing Trump administration, but we also get beat up by the left wing, the Clinton types, and we have not been spared, honestly. The U.S. policy toward Africa has been driven by non-African people. And so the first order of business, I'm seeing it already. I'm seeing already the people who are throwing their names in the, who are pushing around talking about, I'm going to work on Africa. They're calling me up and asking me to help them with a fundraiser or this, that, and other, white people, And so I think that the Assistant Secretary for Africa, we lobbied ever since George Moose was the Assistant Secretary, the first Black Assistant Secretary for Africa. We lobbied that every Assistant Secretary be a Black person. Okay. And that has occurred with the one exception of Walter Cannister during the Bush administration.
Right.
That was during the time Colin Powell was Secretary of State. So they told me, we're giving you the Secretary of State. Don't worry about the Assistant Secretary for Africa. I understood that. But not until the Trump administration with Tibor Nagy, here we go. And so the last thing I want to do is to see a white face as Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs. That would be the starting point. The second point would be the consultations about strategy. I'm already hearing tidbits about the Biden administration and what their approach to Africa would be. I'm sure there would be a lot of pleasantries, Right. I expect a lot of pleasantries, but I don't expect a lot of substance. Now that's where we come in. I mean, we the diaspora.
Right.
The problem is us. The problem is we're not organized sufficiently enough to put the pressure down to demand some of the things that we want. What you find here in the diaspora is African Americans are battling with African immigrants. We all are African, and unless we could put a united front together and come up with a united strategy for the next administration working on Africa, be it a Biden administration or a Trump administration, we get nothing. And so I think the biggest challenge is not so much Biden, the biggest challenge is us.
The biggest challenge is us.
I don't know if my colleague agrees with that, but that's what I think.
So Fatima Tabari, what do you think? What do you think about that?
I always say that the one who speaks the loudest is the one that you hear, right? So if we don't speak the loudest, no one is going to hear us. And because of that, we have to take the initiative to push for what we want to happen, regardless of who's in office. But I do honestly believe that the Biden-Harris office is more accessible to us than what we have now. I do believe that if we as African diaspora really take this serious and know that this is the time to push, right? So we're in an environment where if you're going to do anything, this is when you do it. Right. If you're going to ask for anything, this is where you ask for it. If you're going to demand for something, this is where you demand for it. And you cannot get anything that you just sit and wait for someone to give to you. You have to demand it. You have to bring people together. So, they always say to make anything happen, you need organization, you need money, right? Organization is the greatest key. If we do not organize and bring our voices together and make one strong, loud voice, we will not get what we want. And what that means is looking at each other and realizing that our end goals are the same. Right. we do not have that perfect individual that we think should step forward and be this person who is untouchable, right? This person who is not flawed. This person who is just, everything is right, because no one human being like that exists. So I think if we're able to organize ourselves, if we're able to have one narrative, and if we're able to have and realize the causes that benefit all of us as diasporans, we can make this happen. We have the ability, and we're in the right environment right now to make it happen. So I agree that we can make it happen.
Okay, so I want to disagree a little bit, you know, and I want Mr. Melvin to come on this, because Mr. Melvin worked very closely with Obama administration. In fact, he was his brainchild, you know, the Africa Yali, you know, it was part of his brainchild, you know, idea to the Obama administration. So why do you think now things would change with Africa? I mean, US-Africa relation, or why would you want any change, any significant change now, if considering the Obama administration policy on Africa? Because there was no much change from Obama administration towards Africa and looking at Trump's administration on Africa.
Good question. I think that symbolically, I would say disagree. We felt better with the Obama administration. We felt better when we had the African Economic Forum here in Washington, and some 50 African countries showed up in Washington.
Okay.
We felt better. We felt that the dialogue was better. We felt the relationship with African countries was better.
Okay.
Now, having said that, I don't think that the U.S. policy toward Africa is anywhere near where it ought to be, and I don't care who was in the White House. It's been incrementally better. So we talk about 2%, 3% better than it was. We feel a lot better than it was. That don't mean that the policy was good. I look at the critical issue facing Africa right now. I look at the Continental Free Trade Agreement, which is big. I think the Africans are taking a tremendous notion of linking the markets together and working common purpose. I personally think that's great. But I don't see any movement toward climate change issues. Africa is getting beat up by floods and infestation of locusts and all these sorts of things. And I don't see my country stepping up saying, let's lend a hand to the brothers and sisters on the continent. I don't see us responding to COVID-19 on the continent. There's now 1 million cases of COVID in Africa. And we're going to do a forum with the head of the Africa CDC next month, part of my conference, just to get an update on what Africa is doing to respond to the COVID-19 in Africa. But they do not have a great partner in the United States right now. Of course, we're overwhelmed with our own situation here, but I don't see us coming to the rescue of Africa. And that's where, again, I think the diaspora has got to get organized, you know. And what I would say to Fatimata, what I would say to my sister is that, you know, okay, we agree we have to be unified, but I'm saying, okay, we got Zoom at our disposal. We got Skype at our disposal. There's nothing wrong with us putting together a diaspora forum like next week, you know, so that we can start talking about, I mean, my whole message is don't agonize, organize, you know. There's no reason why we can't bring the voices together to have a common strategy on preparing a platform for the Biden-Harris campaign. You know, you cannot let them leave it to their own devices to decide to do the right things. Neither one of them know Africa. And I'm telling you, the people who have their ear and who claim to be their expert on Africa, honestly, is more of the same. It's more of the same.
Great, yeah. Mr. Melvin. We have to take a break now, and my producer is telling me, you know, we have like 3 minutes to go on a quick break. But before we take the break, Fatima, I want you to tell our viewers one more thing before we take a break. So just respond to what Mr. Melvin said.
We can do what Mr. Melvin is saying. I am ready whenever he's ready, whenever the diasporans are ready, because it's time. And you have to put together a platform to give to those who are in power. That's the reality. No one is going to come to you and say, how can I help you? Right? People don't come to your house and knock on your door and say, hey, how can I help you? Nobody does that. No job comes to you and knock on your door and say, hey, do you need a job? Nobody does that. So we have to be the ones to move forward with what we feel we need and deserve and should have, and move the needle. And I agree. Let's get it done ASAP. And I'm ready. Whenever we're ready, I'm ready to go, and we can put together a platform to offer to this administration. Praying to God, by the grace of God, we will come together to get this administration in, especially now with this amazing woman on the ticket.
Yeah, so thank you so much for that quick response. We'll take a quick short break. Now, when we come back, we'll continue on the conversation with Mr. Melvin Foot. He is the president and the CEO constituency for Africa based in Washington, D.C. And Ms. Fatima Bari, she is the founder, attorney at the Barry Law Center in Washington, D.C., dealing with immigration issues, working on immigration issues. She is very, very terrific to work with on immigration issues. And you can, on the screen, where I think my producer have some things for our viewers on the screen. If you need to talk to Miss Fatima Barry after the show, we will return back. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the New Frontier Africa. I am Abdul Rashid Abubakar, live here in Washington, D.C. In the studio, I have Mr. Melvin Foot, is the president and CEO constituency for Africa, and also Ms. Fatima Bari. She is attorney at law. She's also the founder of the Barry Law Center. Mr. Melvin, say hello to our viewers.
How you doing? Good to be here. Good discussion.
Miss Fatima Bari, say hello to our viewers.
Hello, everyone. It's great to have this conversation.
Yeah, welcome back. So let's go quick back to the discussion. I'll come to you, Ms. Fatima, again. On July 31st this year, the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, announced a final rule, on the USCIS fee schedule. Can you please tell our viewers what this will mean to new applicants for the naturalization?
Okay, so what that means is basically that starting October 2nd, 2020, the fee for certain applications have gone up, some by very little, some are new. So like asylum used to be free, and now they will be charging people $50 fee to file your asylum application. Some of the highest that were raised were the I-485 to adjust your status from $750. Now, starting in October 2nd, it's going to be $1,130. Your work authorization is now $410, but it's going to be $550. The highest, probably one of the highest, is becoming a U.S. citizen. It was $640. Now, until October 2nd, it's going to be $1,170. And there are many others, but those are really the highlight of those that are more affecting. So, and because of that, I'm encouraging people to really, if they have a benefit that they qualify for. to immediately try to apply. Apply for your adjustment of status. Apply for asylum if you feel you qualify for asylum. Apply for your citizenship, especially because that is really going to be astronomical. And you can apply for the citizenship online. You know, you can apply for it online nowadays. So I would really suggest people to start on it ASAP. You don't have that much time left. And these fees are not going anywhere. They are going to go up October 2nd, 2020. And I'm really urging people to do the right thing for themselves and their loved ones. Don't wait, because it's not going to change. A part of what we believe, of course, is the difficulty for non-Americans to become Americans. You're making it harder. And we know that immigrants add exponentially to this economy. But unfortunately, that narrative is not put out as much, and it's not shown as much. But we do add a lot to this economy. We do add a lot to the country, educationally and economically. And it will actually harm the US. And there have been reports that have shown that the numbers have gone down of people applying for benefits, and it has been detrimental to the country. It has been detrimental to the country. But for everyone right now who's watching and listening, and if you know anyone who may qualify for some immigration benefit, let me know. There's a long list. I can't go through all of them right now, but there's a long list of fees that are going up. I just wanted to give people the highlights of those that are mostly regular for people to do.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Fatimata, on that very brilliant, discussion. Mr. Melvin, I'll come back to you, and this is very important to me, and I think to our viewers as well. Now, the former Vice President Joe Biden has officially announced his running mate, Senator Harris. What's your take on this announcement, first of all?
Well, I watched the announcement yesterday, and I was not a fan of Kamala Harris during the campaign. Of course, I was supporting Congresswoman Karen Bass. I think we all who work on Africa, Karen Bass was our person. And I think, but what it exposed was that all these dynamic women that we have available, that's what I saw. I saw at least 10 of them who I said, gee whiz, any one of them could be president, and do a very credible job. So when I saw the decision, and you try to think through why a certain person was chosen, like Susan Rice, for instance, who I know very well. Susan is one of the most brilliant people I know. But I'd rather see her as Secretary of State. I'd rather see her as a national security advisor, Karen Bass, I'd rather see her as Senator Karen Bass, to replace Kamala Harris in the Senate side. I mean, I'm looking at where these Elizabeth Warren, are we talking about Attorney General? Are we talking about Supreme Court? There's plenty of room on this, there's a lot of work that needs to get done going forward. And I think what President Biden, or Vice President Biden has done was pick the person he felt could cover the most bases and assist him in getting the election. But I think that any one of these women would have been suitable to be vice president, and we all would have applauded. So I'm applauding Kamala Harris also. Now I'm getting a lot of Black Americans who say, "Oh, she's not a real Black American. She's from Jamaica." I mean, we don't even know anything about the history of slavery. We don't have any history of how we got to where we are, And we have got to get to the point where I'm convinced that we got this from Africa. This is one of the things you guys gave us was tribal, affiliation. I'm Ga, I'm Ashanti. We are African people, whether you're born in Africa or you're born in New York or Washington or Chicago or Trinidad, and we got to somehow make sure our young people understand that and get away from this ethnic tribal identification. We're African people at home and abroad.
Right. So one question that just came in from our viewers, now to Mr. Melvin. They said, so why is the United States immigration law biased against country from Africa, especially West African countries? What can be done?
Well, I think it's bias from all of African countries. And keep in mind, it's true that this whole thing is racism, you know, and it doesn't matter whether you are educated or talented or whatever. We feel it every day on the street. You know, it's not a surprise to me whatsoever. For a long time, the African immigrants thought this was a Black American problem until African immigrants are showing up dead by police also. And the police is not looking at them saying, oh, you're Ethiopian, or you're from Guinea. All they see is a Black person, right? And so, you know, let's understand that this is a continuation of our struggle for human rights and civil rights in this country. And, you know, there's a lot of people, a lot of white people who feel like Trump represents what they really want, you know, and what they really want is this to be a white country and only white people are having rights and this sort of thing. So all of this discussion about immigration from Africa, or wherever, is really couched to me behind the whole thing of racism. And if you're Black and you're from Haiti, they want you to go. If you're Black, you're from Nigeria, they want you to go. It doesn't make any kind of rhyme or rhythm. It's a absolutely poor decision. We thought that our country had moved well beyond this. We thought with the struggles of John Lewis and the civil rights struggle of the 60s with Martin Luther King, we thought we were past that. But what we find out is that we still there, and we still have a lot of work to do. I applaud Fatimata's work on immigration, and I'm learning a great deal on this discussion. And I know it can't be easy. This has got to be some real challenging things, but I think the work that she's doing is absolutely a critical part of this overall discussion about rights and privileges of Black people.
I mean, you've been working on Africa issues for over 40 years. What do you think is wrong? You know, or can you just tell our viewers your views on Africa?
Well, you're trying to put that 40-year on me to make me old. I'm a young old guy, put it that way. I run 5 miles a day. Anyway, I think that the struggle continues. And one thing that I've learned is that none of us are big enough to solve this problem by ourselves. I think we're talking about a 100-year struggle. Right. You know, I think we're talking about, I think 100 years from now, we're still going to be dealing with issues of race and this kind of thing. So I think that we ought to do everything we can to unify our purpose. Okay. We ought to do everything we can to, if you're in the diaspora, you're outside of Africa, I don't care where you come from, we should have a unified concept of work. That don't mean that you have to agree with me, or I'm your boss, or I'm in charge. None of that, you know. But we ought to agree on a platform for the Biden-Harris ticket. We ought to agree on that, you know. Mm-hmm. What are the 3 or 4 things that we want them to focus on? And then we need to fight, put pressure to make sure that they're able to do those 3 or 4 things. So this unity question to me rings critical. The second thing we have to do is to educate Americans about Africa. Most Americans are uneducated, undereducated, and miseducated about Africa. Now, part of that is because the schools don't teach you about Africa, but another part of that is we don't teach Americans about Africa. You and I and the diaspora, we don't do what we should do or could do to better position Africa in the minds of America. Most Americans think Africa is still a crazy place, a jungle, totally disorganized, you know. And yet everything that we see in the way of culture has really originated from Africa. The history of the world is critically linked to the history of Africa, and African people are great. Right. But we don't do our part to tell that story and make other people around the world understand who we are and what we are about.
Telling Africa's story is part of is part of what we do. Also, thank you so much for reminding us again to do more on that part. So let me come back to Fatimata Barry. Now, based on Trump's administration handling immigration issues and COVID-19, can you predict the voting pattern of Black community towards the Trump re-election?
Well, I'm not a pundit, so I'm not going to try to predict what people will do. I'm not a pollster. I've never done any polls before. I do, however, speak to people. I am, however, linked in with many networks, including the Black American, Black African, Afro-Caribbean networks. So you get a mix of different things. But generally speaking, I do believe that we will come out. I do believe we will come out to vote. So I remember we had the same doubt back in 2012 about the Black vote coming out for Obama, because they said, oh, Black people were so disappointed in him and so on and so forth. But when it came down to the wire, one thing you can say about Black people, when it comes down to the wire, they will show up and show out, right? And I think this time we have a reason to come out and show out. Not everyone was enamored with Senator Harris. For me, she was always my number one choice from the beginning. And I feel like she was and is the person that covers all the bases. She's strong. She is very engaging. When she speaks, you actually want to hear and listen to her speak, at least in my humble opinion. She's very smart, and she can lay down the policies so well. And they cannot box her. Like they cannot put her in a box, right? There's no box that they can put her in right now, not even when she was running for president. And they tried. The other side tried to put her in a box, and they couldn't put her in a box, and they still can't put her in a box. They are flailing, trying to figure out how to describe this woman in such a way that it will make a difference with the rest of the country, and they haven't been able to do it. And I believe that that is a major plus for this Biden-Harris ticket. And let's be real, she has I'm sure she's going to have the Divine Nine behind her, right? I'm sure she's going to have that. I'm an HBCU grad. So as HBCUs, we love ourselves. And I think we are going to have that also coming out. So I am praying and hoping that we can get past this. She's not Black enough. And I believe that that's a small percentage. And even for those who have seen and heard say before, there are many now of those who said that who are like, okay, fine. You know what? We have a choice. We can put those people in, or we can keep the one we have. We are coming out for Biden-Harris because we just don't want the one we have.
Okay, so thank you, Ms. Fatimata. I have another question from our viewers, again for Mr. Melvin Foote. They said that to what extent did political cable networks portray a biased impression of immigration issues after Trump announced ban from Muslim nation? This is a question coming from our viewers.
Yeah, I want to also add to what Fatimata was saying. I really wonder about us showing up for the poll. One thing about Black people, sometimes we don't do what we ought to do. I see there's a group of Africans for Trump out there, and how could that be possible? There's also a group of African Americans who run around to his conventions and claiming, and say how. But I'm worried about the fact is that there's an attempt to suppress the vote. And part of that suppression is to mess up the ability to vote by mail, to put up all kinds of obstacles to vote. And that's targeted directly at us as Black people. There's an attempt to weaken the post office right now, to make the post office not a viable place to send the ballot, and who does that play into? So we ought to be concerned. There's also the issue of coronavirus, and where people come out physically to do what they need to do on the election day. I'm very concerned about that. The other part of the question was, I missed, I'm sorry.
Okay, so the question from our viewers, was that to what extent did political cable network portray a biased impression of immigration issues after President Trump announced ban from Muslim nation? Yeah,
I mean, Trump plays the media, and I would say overall the media has been bad generally. And I would say all of the stations have some culpability there. how we portray. And for instance, there's very little now black media left. Where is the black entertainment television now? Where is Emerge magazine? Where is Ebony? Where are Jet magazine? Where is all the black media where we can actually tell our story? It's not there anymore. So we're relying on this cable news, the Foxes and the CNNs and so forth, to tell us what they think we want to hear. I'm not convinced that we're getting what we need to get. I think to a certain extent, you got social media now. And to me, probably the best place to have the knowledge sharing is probably on Zoom and on Facebook and LinkedIn, and you get a lot of garbage too. But I find that I'm able to communicate to my constituents things that are going on in real time. But the media, the formal media is not what it need be. And I don't think we're strong enough on the black side, and I don't think we're fair enough on mainstream media.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Melvin Foote. Fatima Labari, so now let's come back to you. What are your thoughts towards the US adopting a points-based immigration system similar to that of Canada and New Zealand? I think New Zealand also have the same system. What's your thought?
Well, I'm not very versed in the Canadian point system. The little bit that I do know, maybe if it's done evenly across board, maybe. But I think to a certain degree, U.S. immigration system, the laws and policies that were there before this administration came and did an upending of things, if it was done in a fair manner, because we always say it's broken, because you go to this one officer, immigration officer, he says one thing, you go to another, similar cases, they do something else, right? So it's the problem with our immigration system is that there's no real uniformity. There's a lot of discretion left to the individual immigration officers. Even with this executive order, a lot of what can happen when you get there is left to the discretion of that person you're sitting in front of. So if that person just, I don't know, had a bad day that morning, their wife, their husband, somebody just disappointed them, and they walked in there with a really bad attitude, you are not going to get your immigration benefit more than likely. So that's the problem with our immigration policy. If it was a check process where you have to check those and you have no choice in the matter, then okay, right? Then okay. But I looked through the Canadian point system. It looks very interesting. That's something where I'll have to look a little closer and maybe do some of those policy recommendations for us. But the U.S. immigration system it's not done by anyone but the Congress, right? So a lot of these things that this administration is putting forward, the Biden-Harris campaign or administration can come in and just get rid of all of it. Like literally just get rid of all of it, because all of it is just, it's policy. It's not law, it's policy. It's what they are doing while they're in office. So they can take that away at any time. The laws that are in the books are the laws. Those are put in place by Congress. Those are voted on, and those are determined within the Congress. So that's what we really have to target. And if we want to do any sort of immigration overhaul, we have to target the Congress. So that's why many times when people talk about, when you talk about all these down ballot races, you're not just saying it just to say it. The presidency is extremely important, obviously, extremely important. But those down ballot races are very important. They make the laws. They make the laws. And so if you don't have the right people in there who would listen to you and take your policy recommendations seriously, you have nowhere to go. Even if the president can say what he wants to say, he can issue his executive order, but he gets stuck. That's why everything that President Obama put in, that was protecting us, even though people didn't realize the protections we had under Obama until it started being taken away. I remember people calling Obama the deporter in chief. A lot of the deportations, because there was an actual mandate that was put out that said our target are criminals and so on and so forth. When this administration came in, that was completely upended. And people who had businesses here are being deported and removed from this country. And because they're being removed, people are losing jobs. So then what happens? Our jobless numbers go up. So it's a trickle down effect, if you want to call it, because when you hurt one group, the other group will also get hurt. I always say, don't wait until yours get touched before you feel the urge to do something. You have to feel the urge to do something because it's the right thing to do at the right time, and you should do it. And we're at a place where we are all interconnected right now. Seriously interconnected.
Thank you so much, Fatimata, on that note. Mr. Melvin, let me come back to you. What's on CFE desk right now?
We're working on our annual conference, the Ronald H. Brown African Affairs Series, which takes place between September the 9th, September the 12th and September the 19th. And it's going to be virtual. So we're putting together a fantastic panel. And the one thing about the quarantine and Zoom, we're able to put together a more focused conversation. So we're going to be talking about everything from healthcare, coronavirus in Africa. We're going to talk about trade and investment. We're going to put together a panel that's going to feature 5 African Americans who live in Africa, who packed up and went to Africa to do business and doing very well. You know, I think if you want to encourage more Americans, more African Americans to do business in Africa, maybe it's good for them to hear from people who are living in South Africa or Namibia and say, oh yeah, I'm growing vegetables. This is what I'm doing. I'm making lots of money and I'm happy as all get out. So we're planning to do something like that. We're going to have another forum tied into Cambridge. We call it the Harriet Tubman Town Meeting on Africa. And it's going to be based in Cambridge, Maryland, where Harriet Tubman is from. So we're putting that together, and we're going to do something to try to leverage U.S. Peace Corps. Peace Corps, I'm a former Peace Corps volunteer. That's how I got started. But there's only like 2% of Blacks in the Peace Corps. And they keep the number real small intentionally. You know, Peace Corps was made for Kennedy's kids and Sergeant Shriver's kids. And so now that we have all the volunteers pulled out of the world, really, 7,000 volunteers got evacuated in March. This is the perfect time to rethink it and rethink the policy of the Peace Corps and what it ought to do going forward. They have 60 years so far. If you want to do another 60 years, what do we want the Peace Corps to do to benefit Africa? For instance, I think Yali should be moved under the Peace Corps. So you have a program where you're sending Americans to Africa and places. How about having another program bringing Africans to the U.S. for training and capacity building? So those are some of the things that we're going to focus on. So I'm really knee deep in the planning of the 2020 Ronald H. Brown African Affairs Series.
Thank you so much for sharing that information. So Fatimata, what is vital information you think you want to share with our viewers?
Vital information in reference to what? Immigration?
In reference to immigration issues. In reference to immigration issues.
Okay, so the most vital, if you are a green card holder, apply for your citizenship. People think if they have a green card, they are safe. You're not. I know people who are in removal with a green card in hand. You're not safe, okay? That's just the reality. Your safest bet is to be a US citizen. If you have children, because I'm technically what you would have called back then a dreamer if it existed, right? I was a dreamer, technically. So I lived here for most of my life as a child, undocumented, okay? And by the time we went through the lawyers and everything happened and I got my green card, I was going to law school. That's how long it took. And I grew up in this country as a Black child. My experiences is of a Black child, of a Black teenager, and of a Black woman. I have the African culture because I have parents who who embedded it in us at home. And so I'm grateful for that. And so I understand how many young African immigrant children may not get it. And I urge parents to have conversations with the children, because whatever their peers are doing, they may not be able to do the same thing, because the ramifications for them is very different from their American peers. They may sound the same, they may look the same, everything is equal. But if you get caught smoking a joint, what could happen to you is removal. Your peer may get community service, but you could be removed. So if you have a young person who has had a green card for the past 5 years, please apply for them to have their citizenship. If you have a young person who is living in this country undocumented, have a conversation with them and make them understand that they are undocumented and what that means. If you need me to help you discuss it with somebody, let me know, because that conversation has to happen. That has to happen. If it doesn't happen, we will have our kids in detention, because I know some who are in detention, and it's not a pretty sight. It's not a good place for these young people to be. And they don't understand. Why? Because like I was, this is all I knew.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Fatimota, for that vital information. If anyone have any question, Fatimota, her information is on the screen. Mr. Melvin Foot, your last advice for Africans in the diaspora, Black community.
Well, you know, first, I want to also compliment you, Fatimota. It seemed to me that we ought to get, we should be working together. I wonder whether the Congressional Black Caucus is as strongly behind the immigration issue as they need be. And part of this is the bifurcation of who got the issue. This is not an issue for me personally, because I was born here and, you know, came here via the slave trade. But for African immigrants who are first generation, second generation, it's a horrible position to be in. And so again, I think this is where the diaspora ought to be working together, you know, and so we ought to have a discussion afterwards about how we can collaborate further on this. I just think that, we're going to be okay. This election is very important. And I'm not one, I'm a 501c3, so I can't tell you who to vote for, but I can tell you to vote, express yourself and allow, don't crawl under a rock and think this don't affect you. It does. And do everything you can to have your voices heard and make sure that the next administration, whoever, supports African people here in this country.
Thank you, Mr. Melvin Foot. Mr. Melvin cannot tell us, who to vote for, but you have to vote. That is the message to all African diaspora, in the across the United States. Go out and vote. That is the message from today's show. Before I say goodbye to you all, Ms. Fatima Dabari, one last message.
So I totally appreciate that Mr. Melvin cannot tell you who to vote for. I'm not a 501c3. I'm an individual. And as an individual who has been here, I'm telling you, you vote for the ticket that will serve us well, that we can have access to, I would actually listen to us. And I believe that to be the Biden-Harris ticket. So when you go out there to vote on November 3rd, or when you early vote, at least in Maryland, it's in October, you vote for the Biden-Harris ticket. And regardless of what you may think, your options as an African immigrant is what we have right now, where they're putting blocks on certain African countries from coming into this country, telling us as people of the black skin that we are not good enough, telling us, somebody in the White House basically sending a message to suburban wives that it'd be a danger if we go into their neighborhoods, people that look like us. Think about it. You may think whatever you want to think about person that you may think she's not Black enough or he's too much of an old white man, but the alternative that we have right now, and people may not like people saying that, give me another reason as the alternative, but that's real life, right? In life, your alternative is this: either you cross the street without a car, or you cross it when the car is coming and it hits you and you die. So those are your alternatives, and it's the same option. So for anything that you do, you have one or the other. It's not, well, give another reason why I should do it. No, the other reason.
My producer said we have to go. Thank you so much, Ms. Fatimata Barry. Thanks so much for honoring our invitation. That is Ms. Fatimata Barry, the founder and attorney, Barry Law Center in Washington, D.C. And also, thank you so much, Mr. Melvin Foote. He is the president and the CEO constituency for Africa. He's been working on the African continent for many, many years, and he's doing tremendously well on African policies and African issues. Thank you so much, Mr. Melvin Foote. I'll continue this conversation with both Mr. Melvin Foote and Ms. Fatimata in future. But until we meet again next week on another episode of the New Frontier Africa, my name is Abdul Rashid Abubakar. I say, have a wonderful day. Bye.